Yolan True and welcome to another exciting day in our galaxy with Star Trek Fleet Command. Today it's time for another viewer's wish video. Hi Double. It's a video about isolytic damage and isolytic cascade because some people started asking about this. What is that? What does that mean? How does it work? And that's why I decided now to make that video after they asked. And it's not as complicated as you might think. There are a lot of complicated calculations if you want to know the exact number of damages does added to your damage and stuff like this. If you want this, there are some good pages out there where you can read this, but that, in my point of view, is far too complicated for a video. I left the whole I'm not that good at math stuff in it at my burning morale and hull breach video, but I anyway think that's far too complicated for a video. You just want to have the videos as short as necessary as possible and as long as necessary, and so I will give you the important overview. If you really want to go into calculating to the last digit behind in the percentages, there's a lot of stuff to read out there, but as one of my Commodores said when I was announcing that I'm filming this video, too lazy to read it. So yeah, that I can imagine that a lot of people are too lazy to read it. And I honestly don't need to know the last smallest point of percentage behind it. This game is still, for me, not science. It's for me still fun in my spare time, even if I'm doing those videos now for more than 3 months. And the channel really did well after 3 months. So thank you again for that one. But let's get a little bit in the basics of that. What is isolytic damage? In the short version, it's just a second kind of damage Scopely introduced into the game. You all know the normal damage, and you know the damage your weapons do if you attack a hostile or another player or whatever. And you know mitigation that takes away of the damage if the other one has mitigation that takes away some of the damage you do. And it's exactly the same with the isolytic damage. There's isolytic damage you can have on your ships. You can, as I say, it's not necessarily there. And the one point is normal mitigation the ships have doesn't work against isolytic damage. So only against the normal damage. For stopping the isolytic damage to be too strong against your ship, you also need isolytic defense. So in the end, we have normal damage and mitigation. And then as a second part, we have isolytic damage and isolytic defense. They are independent from another, but all do damage to your ship, or you use them to do damage to others. And the cascade part I come to later, because I first want to go to those two. They are the standard. So isolytic damage and isolytic defense. That's what we concentrate on right now and leave out the normal damage and mitigation, but it's exactly the same in the end. But the question will be, how do you do isolytic damage and how do you get isolytic defense? And that works via artifacts, for example. So let's go to my station for a second and have a look at artifacts. It was invented by Scopely definitely to make some more money, because they always offer certain artifacts. They are doing that right now as well. For example, the Melkothian spirits you can buy at the moment for 100 quid here where I am. And that is one of the artifacts regarding isolytic damage. In this case, it increases isolytic damage against armadas. There are different epic ones, which I all don't have yet, because I didn't pay for that one. You know, I'm paying more than I used to on this game because for the videos, but I'm not buying everything that I can show you without paying for them. So they are the dual generators. They increase isolytic defense for all ships. Here you have the part where you can get isolytic defense for all your ships. And then we have the Borg Queen remnants or remains. They increase isolytic damage for all the ships. So with the Borg Queen remains, you get isolytic damage. With the, I always forget the name, the dual generators, you get isolytic defense, so that your ship can defend against isolytic damage from other players. Those are the two that are regularly in the Scopely shop, and if you want to have them, feel free to buy them. Everybody has to decide that for themselves, but that's definitely one of the points why they invented it. But they are a business, so I complain about certain prices time and time again for different things, but in the end they are a company that wants to make money, otherwise they wouldn't do the game. So in the end, some people will have to spend money. As I said, I do spend a little more since I'm doing those videos, because there are things I need to get for you, so I can show you, like the Voyager skin, that I can make this video early to show you, so you can decide if you want it or not. But there are other things I don't buy. I'm not that rich. But there are also ways you can get a little bit isolytic damage easier if you do events, or if you do formation armadas and stuff. Because there are 3 uncommon ones that also in certain cases do isolytic damage. One is the Blade of Tekon. That increases isolytic damage on a certain state, because if it's on an interceptor and the opponent has a hull breach, so it's not all the time like with the Queen's remains, the Borg Queen remains, but if you're on an interceptor and the opponent has a hull breach, you cause isolytic damage. That's the Blade of Tekon. Then we have the Vidian Onata Organ Harvester, and that increases isolytic damage while on a battleship and the opponent is burning. So you have to think about your officers then. And of course we're at the interceptor and the battleship, and now we still need an explorer, and that's what we have Captain Proton's blaster for. It increases isolytic damage while on an explorer with morale. And in this case, of course, there it's quite useful to have lower deck personnel like Harry Kim or B'Elanna Torres. Harry Kim can provide morale from below deck, and B'Elanna Torres, was it hull breach or burning? I just don't know from my mind at the moment, but one of those, she does that. And so that will trigger those if you are on the right ship. And so you can cause isolytic damage. Otherwise, the ships don't have isolytic damage from begin with, unless you have the Borg Queen's remains. And there are definitely other ways as well with the artifacts, but that's what it is. And the interesting thing is that isolytic damage comes kind of later than your normal damage, because it brings in some nice stuff after all your research and everything is counted in. I when I did my research, the Cascade comes into play at this point. The Cascade multiplies your isolytic damage if you manage to get some. So first of all, you need to have artifacts that cause isolytic damage. And then if you have an officer that causes this cascade, it multiplies the damage. And I printed it out for me from one of the good websites out there, where the steps were in, so I don't forget anything. So the steps are: the normal damage is calculated regularly, and isolytic damage is calculated based on your research, artifacts, etc. And Isolytic Cascade increases the isolytic damage by your cascade percent. I show you the cascade gain later. And then more isolytic damage is calculated based on your cascade percent of the normal damage. And the isolytic damage from those both steps is added, and then you have the final isolytic damage. That's why I said we don't do all the percentage calculations. It's quite complicated. But if you have isolytic damage and isolytic cascade, a lot of damage is added to your normal damage. And so it's not only important to have the artifacts and the right ship combination with the status of morale, hull breach, or burning, if you are not spending too much money. Otherwise, you just get the board queen remains and that's it. And the cascade. And the cascade is something, I talk about this officer this week as well. I don't know if I did it before this video or after. I always have to batch film because I cannot do it on several days a week because I have to do my normal work as well. And so I have to batch film, and sometimes because of the interest people are asking for, I sometimes shuffle the videos I already filmed around. So I always film a week ahead or more if I can, and then depending on what people are requesting, I sometimes shuffle them around. So it's not always that the video I filmed later is published later because people are asking for it, and so I reschedule it earlier. And that's why I sometimes don't know if the video came before or after. But still, this week there also is or was a Carol Freeman video, and there I want to quickly show you the thing. If the enemy player has any state, so if you're using one of the 3 artifacts and it works, Carol Freeman increases your Isolytic Cascade damage by 60% for 1 round. And Isolytic Cascade multiplies your total damage, including Isolytic damage, and all research and other bonuses. Yeah, the states I mentioned a lot of times are morale, burning, hull breach, or assimilated. That counts here as well. And that's why I quickly went into Carol Freeman. She's one of the officers that bring the cascade, not the only one, but I'm talking about her this week anyway. And so that's how you do it. But to recap in a second, but first I have to mention something I must not forget. If you are not a subscriber of my channel yet, please do subscribe again, or for the first time, and please click this little bell so you get notification when the next video is out. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you have any question, anything to add for isolytic damage or whatever, if you are a fan of this mathematic calculations for it until the last details, you can leave a longer comment as well. Or if you just want to say hi or where you're from, because I'm curious with all the viewers from around the world, just leave a comment. I'll definitely read them. And if you have questions, you will see that when I have the time to do it and I can answer, I will answer. You can see it in a lot of cases already. Or if you have a video request, just do it. But to recap, artifacts are important for isolytic damage, but in the end, isolytic damage is just another kind of damage. So you have normal damage and mitigation, as I said earlier. Then you have isolytic damage and isolytic defense. They are working in parallel. One doesn't work on the other. They are independent, so to speak. The only thing that works on everything at once is the isolytic cascade that multiplies your damage. That's where some very interesting officers will come in. I will talk about, as I said, Carol Freeman I talk about this week as well. And if you want some other basics or about buildings, ships, crews, whatever, the next video is right here in the end screen. I'll see you there. I'll be back.